Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, November the 17th, 2023. This weekend there is a conjunction between the Sun and Mars in Scorpio. And in fact, today this Sun-Mars conjunction is pretty much exact. It's actually made stronger by the fact that Venus is making a semi-square to Mars. So really today is just as much a Sun-Mars conjunction day as tomorrow is. So the theme in this video is going to be Sun-Mars conjunctions. And I want to start off by giving you a flavour of an extreme manifestation of a Sun-Mars conjunction. So let's go. This is from a website. This website is I don't know how you pronounce it, meaww.com, and so. There's the headline. Kajetan Poznanski, man obsessed with Hannibal Lecter, planned to eat his teacher after beheading her. Now this is from April the 11th, 2023. So let's read this. Warsaw, Poland. A convicted murderer obsessed with Hannibal Lecter has filed an appeal against his life sentence after being found guilty of chopping off a teacher's head and placing her body parts in a bag. Kajetan Poznanski was imprisoned in 2021 for a crime that sent shivers through Poland. He claimed to have killed Katarina Jarozinska as part of a self-improvement plan to the judges. Details of the heinous murder committed by the Polish national have only recently become public after he successfully appealed his sentence for the 2016 murder. The crime perpetrated by the 27-year-old has been described as one of the worst in the history of Poland. His lawyers are now arguing that his sentence should be overturned. There was something, his Interpol document, something about Interpol. Is that an arrest warrant or something in there? You can't really see it on his video, but there's his birth date, which I think is it 6th of October 1989? I've got it right, but I don't have his time of birth. Poznanski, known as the Hannibal of Zolibor because of the affluent Warsaw area where he resided and his obsession with a fictitious serial killer, went to Jarozinska's house in 2016 pretending to be interested in learning Italian. Once inside, he pulled out a knife and attacked the 30-year-old in what the prosecution described as a premeditated killing. He then called a cab to take him back to his rented flat after sawing the woman's body into pieces and packing the pieces into a bag. He is believed to have said that he was transporting a wild boar's carcass when the taxi driver asked why blood was leaking out of the luggage. So I wanted to go through that rather gruesome article just to give you an idea of perhaps how a Sun-Mars conjunction might manifest in an rather extreme circumstance. And I don't think in most cases the Sun-Mars conjunction really works like that. But before I talk about the Sun-Mars conjunctions, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is Friday, November the 17th, 2023. So here we go. Now, top right, that is Diana Rigg, actress Diana Rigg, and she has a Sun-Mars conjunction. And I'll be talking a bit about her horoscope. I mean, not very much. I don't really know a great deal about her. But yeah, she has a Sun-Mars conjunction. So as far as what's going on today, this is the chart for today, set for New York, noon, New York. Yes. So Main thing? Well, main thing is a Sun-Mars conjunction. You can see that the Sun and Mars are very close. They're 9 arc minutes apart. It actually is a little bit closer tomorrow. The Sun, Mars in Scorpio. The Sun and Mars are male planets. They are fiery planets. Together, they can be quite aggressive. They can be accident prone. They might hint about behavior which is just a bit too hasty. We get into something and it may be difficult to get out of it. It's just a bit too much having the two male positive planets together like this. So today, Friday, you do have to be a bit careful here. Don't be too hasty. Don't be too headstrong, because otherwise there could be problems. Also, Venus, we see Venus is at 1019 Libra. Venus is making an exact semi-square to Mars. So Venus semi-square Mars, the pair of Venus and Mars, it's connected with the way we relate. Venus being the planet of female sexuality, Mars being the planet of male sexuality, and in a 45-degree aspect. There could be a bit of friction there. Relationships, close romantic relationships, may not go quite as planned. Particularly if a relationship is new, there could be a certain amount of aggravation. Compatibility may be an issue there. Two people might think they're compatible, and again, particularly if they've just met, but when it comes down to it, there may be an issue there. So that Venus-Mars semi-square needs to be treated with a bit of caution, in terms of relationships. But there's a different thing going on with Sun and Mars. Look at Neptune. Neptune is trine the Sun-Mars conjunction. So a lot of our energy is going to get put into Neptunian stuff. So what is Neptunian? What do we mean by Neptunian energy? Now, Neptune is the god of the sea. It's also with Neptune we're thinking about deception, confusion. It can be spiritual, but we might find ourselves putting a lot of energy with that Sun-Mars conjunction into something which is a wild goose chase, into something which is a fundamental deception. So be careful about putting all your energy into one thing, because you might be wasting a lot of time. At best, at worst, you could be getting yourself into a dangerous situation. But on the plus side, Neptune is a planet of spirituality, so some of us may want to put our energies into spiritual pursuits. And I suppose in most cases, there shouldn't be much of a problem with that. One final aspect going on today is the moon is trine Uranus. It's quite gentle. It's not like moon square Uranus. It stirs things up. It creates a bit of excitement, but nothing too spectacular. Simply because the moon is in Capricorn, Uranus is in Taurus, so they're quite grounded signs. They're earth signs. So I would not have expected fireworks from the moon trine Uranus, but it does make things a bit more exciting. So overall, what kind of day is it? I mean, it should be quite an exciting day, not least because of that moon trine Uranus. The moon, you can see that the moon, having made that trine to Uranus, starts aspecting the sun. So, that is good. There's something going on there. And we just have to make sure that we are careful, that we're not too headstrong, that we don't get caught up in our own egos. I suppose the Sun and Mars are both male planets, and so it's probably more likely that the people who are going to be headstrong and impulsive are going to be men rather than women. So that, it's just the male energy is a bit too strong there with that Sun-Mars conjunction. Could be dangerous. And also, don't do anything dangerous. I've said this several times, when we had Mars opposition Uranus a bit earlier, but Sun conjunct Mars can be connected with fires, electricity. So be careful if you've got open fires, if with electricity, don't mess around. If you've got a problem, call in an expert. Okay, so having done that, having looked at the overall position of the planets for today, I want to look at the 12 signs of the zodiac. So here are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Friday, November the 17th, 2023. Aries, you're ambitious in an understated way. You're not going to shout about your ambitions, but you nonetheless know what you want. And once you start putting your plans into action, you'll get steady results. But the Sun is getting very close to Mars, your ruler. So don't let emotional considerations get in the way of common sense. Taurus, you can have a surprising impact on the world around you. The part of you that wants to be different, which enjoys being a revolutionary, comes to the surface. So if you want to create change, then now is your chance. But change must have a purpose. The world has to be recreated, and you need to finish up with a positive, constructive message. Gemini, no one really knows what you're thinking, and if they did know, it probably wouldn't do you any favours. But you're exploring areas that are intensely interesting, at least to you, and you perhaps realise that you're ahead of the crowd, and perhaps later you can be more open about your opinions. Cancer, it's important that you don't rush to judgment. You might come across things that don't make sense, and people might be around you who appear to be talking nonsense. But it's important that you hear the whole story, because in the end it might all make sense. In relationships, things don't turn out quite as expected, and that might be a good thing. Leo, the Sun, your ruler, is now very close to the planet Mars. You're very dynamic and you're able to make things happen, but you could also be accident prone, and at the same time certain people could make you really annoyed. You know who they are, and you should probably stay out of their way. At work, an organisational change can work in your favour. Virgo, part of you wants to keep things exactly as they are. Change seems to be stressful, too time-consuming. But without change, there's atrophy and decay. And today, you need to consider the many alternatives that are available to you. And taking the plunge, committing to real change, may not be as difficult as you had imagined. Libra, although your communication skills remain good, you're probably not in the mood for large-scale social interaction. You want to be able to turn people on and off at the flick of a switch, and not have anyone impose upon you. So find your secure spot and direct your life according to your own plans. Tomorrow is another day. Scorpio, it's a sign of maturity to consider how other people see you, and you particularly need to understand how your interventions will be perceived. You therefore need to give the matter some thought and not say the first thing that comes into your head. But the right intervention can be decisive and very favourable for you. Sagittarius. Keep watching. Keep your own counsel. There's nothing much that has to be done, but we live in an unstable world and anything can happen. As a Sagittarian, you have an intuition for what's going on, and if there are problems, you're in a good position to anticipate them. In terms of money, you could become vaguely aware of a new opportunity, but there's probably no need to take immediate action. Capricorn. You've got a sense of humour, though some people who don't know you very well might not realise this. And today, with the moon aspecting Uranus, there's plenty to amuse you. Further, your jokes can hit the mark in that subtle Capricorn way. Some of your friends and colleagues seem to be under pressure. Aquarius. The working week might be coming to an end, but many Aquarians aren't finished. With the Sun moving to a conjunction of Mars, there's a lot you want to accomplish, and you won't take kindly to people getting in your way. But just because you're ambitious doesn't mean you have to be sociable, even at work. Pisces. Neptune has been moving through your star sign for years, with its alternate messages of confusion, delusion, and spiritual wholeness. And today, Neptune does come into focus because of a trine aspect involving Neptune on one hand and the Sun and Mars on the other. It's easy to put your energy into unusual, offbeat pursuits. It could be great, it could be a disaster. It depends on you. Okay, so now I'm going to look at the I Ching. So, as always, I asked a question. My question being, what is Friday going to be like for people watching this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram 42, which is increase. In general, it's a very good hexagram. It suggests that things can increase in our life. Now, that might be money, it might be possessions, it might be knowledge, it might be friends. So, whatever we're involved in, the thing, it is our major focus today, consider the possibility that there can be increase. There can be things coming our way. We're going to get more of it, whether it's more friends, more money, more possessions, more respect, more whatever. So that's the basic raw hexagram. But there are moving lines. In fact, there are two moving lines. The top line moves and the bottom line moves. So with the bottom line moving, there's a call to action. So, you can't expect things to happen unless you do something. You do actually have to do something to create the increase you're looking for. And so be active, decide what needs to be done to get what you want, and just do it. Within reason, of course. Don't do anything that's stupid or dangerous or whatever, but provided you're being reasonable, just take that action. It's the right thing to do. So that's good. But then the top line moves. And the top line moving isn't quite so good. It says you might benefit, increase coming your way, whatever, money, contacts, whatever you're looking for. But you might not be inclined to share the increase because, from a sort of spiritual perspective, if you increase, then everyone else should benefit as well. You're a member of society, you're a member of the community. Of course, the moon is in Capricorn. The moon is quite self-centered in Capricorn. And maybe this is linking with this hexagram. Not that this hexagram has anything to do with Moon in Capricorn, but that moving line is about being inclined to keep everything for yourself, not really wanting to share. And if you take that view, you gain something and you don't want to share it with other people. But, perhaps it's knowledge. You learn something, but you want to keep it to yourself. No, that's not a good idea in most circumstances. And, if you do keep things to yourself, it's like the whole flow of the hexagram grinds to a halt and you don't get the benefits. And furthermore, your relations with other people can be undermined. You might lose friends. So don't be selfish. Try to be altruistic and society and community minded, because if you increase and no one else increases, then it's a waste of time. It's not going to work. Okay, so with those two moving lines, top and the bottom, we move to a second hexagram. And that second hexagram that it moves to is holding together. This is about some kind of alliance. The suggestion here is that we can't do things on our own. And what is it? One of the American founding fathers, and he says something like, was it Benjamin Franklin or one of those people? That says something. If we don't hang together, we hang separately. Isn't that right? I think he was talking about the revolution. So it's in that kind of spirit. We need to hold together, and so we can't do it on our own. And that links to that last line of the previous hexagram. We can't keep it all. We can't just keep all the benefits to ourselves, because we need to be community minded. We need to think about society, and this is more so in the second hexagram, holding together. We need to come together with people. People can help us achieve our aims. People can also help protect us. So if we're in a dangerous situation, or a potentially dangerous situation, by coming together in a group, by having some kind of union, we can deal with it, because that togetherness is going to make us stronger, and more protected. Okay, so that's the I Ching. Doesn't seem to be too bad, provided we are altruistic. We mustn't keep things all to ourselves, because then we're going to fail, and we could damage our reputation and cause ourselves other problems. Okay, so I wanted to look at the Sun-Mars conjunction. And what it means. In terms of what's going on now, I've sort of already talked about this Sun-Mars conjunction. It's a very positive masculine energy, which can be sort of counterproductive. We can take things too far. We can sort of burn ourselves out. And, on a global level, the Sun-Mars conjunction can create problems. We know there's a conflict going on. We know there are two conflicts going on. There's in the Gaza Strip in Ukraine. You've got the Sun-Mars conjunction. That's kind of throwing petrol, gasoline onto the fire, isn't it? So it's going to really stir things up. A lot of power struggles, a lot of egos, wherever we are. Particularly in sort of politics, you can imagine what's going on in the corridors of power with that Sun-Mars conjunction. Bobby Kennedy, he was assassinated. When was he assassinated? 1968. Of course, he's the father of the Robert Kennedy, who's put his name forward as being a presidential candidate. I think he's put his name forward as a third party candidate. Anyway, his father was assassinated in 1968, June the 5th, 1968, and he was assassinated on a Sun-Mars conjunction. So maybe that Sun-Mars conjunction in June 1968 sort of helped summarize and describe what was going on. But really what I want to look at is some horoscopes of people who have Sun-Mars conjunctions in their chart. So at the beginning of this video, I described the case of Kajetan Karol Poznanski. I don't have his time of birth, but I do have his date of birth. So I wanted to have a quick look at his chart. He was apparently very well educated. Came from a good family. I think was his mother a judge or something. So shouldn't have been any problems in his life. But I think he had a good job. But he decided to kill someone in the most violent and horrific way. And you can see that he has got a Sun-Mars conjunction in his chart. So for him, that Sun-Mars conjunction was expressing itself as extreme violence. Of course, we do have to look at the rest of the chart. In his case, he had Jupiter square. You see, Jupiter is exactly square Mars. And if you remember, I don't know, some time ago, I suggested that Jupiter opposition Mars was the worst aspect in the book. Maybe Jupiter square Mars is the second worst aspect in the book, because Jupiter square Mars doesn't know when to stop in extreme situations. Jupiter is about excessiveness. And Jupiter square Mars, the violence just doesn't stop. That energy, that action doesn't stop. And that's, when I've just read you a description of him decapitating the Italian teacher and cutting her up and whatever, there must have been some kind of frenzy, but I don't know, that he had some weird philosophical idea about to justify why he did what he did. You can see in his case, he had Jupiter, Jupiter opposition Neptune with, Mars square Neptune, Mars square Jupiter. Mars square Neptune can be an attraction to usually sleaze and drugs and the underworld. I suppose in this case he may have been in a sort of a narcissistic way been attracted to the depths of his own unconscious and emotions and his weird thoughts, and he took his own thoughts too seriously. Everyone has strange thoughts at times, but he took his strange thoughts and created a philosophy out of it, and actually acted on it. And yes, so he has got a T-square. So his Jupiter-Neptune, I suppose, could be his sort of fantasies. And how does he realize his fantasies? He has these fantasies. Jupiter expands, makes things larger, makes things more exaggerated. Neptune is the fantasies, his Jupiter-Neptune opposition. Then he has Sun-Mars on a T. He realizes all these fantasies through an act of extraordinary violence. So that might be his chart. I don't have a time of birth for him, but I think that kind of fits. And I would like to thank one of the commenters, Mariga Shara, who suggested I look at his chart, and I hadn't come across him before, and I'd had his chart on file for a couple of months, and then it popped up just now when I was looking for Sun-Mars conjunctions. So I'm not saying that that's always how Sun-Mars conjunctions work out, and it is an extreme case. So let's look at another person who has or had a Sun-Mars conjunction. This is a Nazi, Julius Streicher. Julius Streicher was an editor. He edited this Nazi magazine called Der Stürmer in the 1930s, and he was notorious for his anti-Semitic speeches. but he just went on and on and on. He sort of, in the 30s, during the persecution of the Jews in Germany, he really stirred everyone up through his speeches. I think he was centered around, I think his stomping ground was Nuremberg, and I think under his, when he was, I think he may have been Gauleiter there, and I think the synagogue was destroyed. But then in 1940, his career basically came to an end. I think he was a serial adulterer. I think he was into pornography. He was, even by Nazi standards, he wasn't very reasonable. And so from 1940 onwards, apparently he did pretty much nothing. So during the Second World War, he'd already done his stuff. Then, and there's his Sun-Mars conjunction, very close Sun-Mars conjunction. So he has basically an aggressive view of the world, just sort of attitude hostile. So because of the vehemency of his anti-Semitic speeches and what he wrote in the magazines he edited, I think particularly Der Stürmer, he was tried at Nuremberg for war crimes. Now, he was not involved in any war crimes in some respects, because he wasn't in occupied territory. He didn't personally kill anyone, as far as I know. He wasn't specifically involved in the Holocaust. But the accusation was that he was giving these speeches at a time when he knew that Jews were getting murdered, and because of that, he was considered to be responsible. And during the Nuremberg trials, he couldn't help himself. He sort of kept criticizing the judges, saying, suggesting that, I don't know precisely, but it's all in talking about their Jewish influences and all of this, and he kept making things even worse for himself, and so in the end he was sentenced to death and he was hanged. So in his case, it may be because he wasn't directly involved with the Nazis' crimes after 1940, if he'd been contrite and if he'd kept his mouth shut, maybe he would have saved his neck. And I do think that there are some people who have claimed that Julius Streicher should not have been executed. By the way, Julius Streicher, he has a lot of air in his chart, and Mercury, Venus, Sun and Mars, of course. So he's got 5 traditional planets in air signs, and we often associate air with intelligence. And now we can't do that. We can't associate air with intelligence. It's about the way the intelligence is perhaps used or not used. And Julius Streicher, his IQ, because his IQ was tested before he went on trial in Nuremberg by some American psychologist. His IQ was 106. Okay, if you could take 100 as being average, I suppose that's above average. But of all the Nazis who were tested, who were tested for their IQ, he got the lowest score. That's just an interesting thing about him. So that's Julius Streicher. So let's look at someone else. Okay, let's quickly look at Diana Rigg. As I said, I don't know much about Diana Rigg. Of course, I've seen a lot of the Avengers, where she was Emma Peel, and so she has Sun-Mars conjunction in Cancer. I looked at some interviews with her on YouTube, and she comes over as being quite an aggressive person. She seems to have a very sharp tongue. She seems, someone who does not suffer fools gladly. You would not want to be on the wrong side of her. That was an impression I got looking at these YouTube videos. And of course, the role that made her famous was sort of Emma Peel in the Avengers, which was sort of an assertive woman who did lots of acrobatics and I think sort of killed people sometimes, and death was seen in a very sort of flippant way. So maybe through her acting role as Emma Peel, she was living out her Sun Mars conjunction. And really, that's all I want to say about her. That is her picture up there. But I just want to have someone who is, I think she's someone who is widely respected, certainly in acting world. No one says anything bad about her. Oh, well, she was in, I think she was in the Game of Thrones, wasn't she? Again, taking quite a, I've never watched for Game of Thrones, but wasn't she some woman who arranged some poisoning at the end? Quite a sort of unpleasant character, but maybe she was living out the Sun and the Sun Mars conjunction in her role in the Game of Thrones. But I just wanted to put up her chart to have a Sun Mars conjunction of someone who is completely respected. No one says anything bad about her. So I thought I would do that. Okay, who else? Nicola Sturgeon. Nicola Sturgeon, she used to be First Minister of Scotland, leader of the Scottish Nationalist Party, who had a rapid fall from grace. Now there's her Sun-Mars conjunction. Her Mars is in Leo, her Sun is in Cancer, but they are within 5 degrees. I mean, I was doing a search for Sun-Mars conjunction within 5 degrees. That was my criteria. So she comes over as being, I suppose, a woman who stands up for herself. She was, in a way, quite a very successful politician because she was in power for so long. Quite aggressive, I would have said. There was this scene on television. It was in the 2019 election when she was watching on television how a candidate from a different party got defeated in a by-election, and I think it was, and she just did this sort of really horrible victory dance, whoop of victory. And I don't know, I can't remember quite the gesture, but it was a really unpleasant gesture, quite a vicious, I don't know, triumphal gesture, and it was nasty. I'm sure you can find it if you look on YouTube. And maybe that's a Sun-Mars conjunction. So Nicola Sturgeon did seem to be quite an abrasive person. And there's her Sun-Mars conjunction. So who else? I don't know anything about German politics, but there is a woman called Alice Weidel, and Alice Weidel is the head of the right-wing German party Alternative, what is it, AfD, is that Alternative for Deutschland, Alternative for Germany, and she is, the party is sort of anti-immigration. It's very skeptical about climate change, opposes all these supposed measures to be green. Very skeptical of the war in Ukraine, and she's, I suppose, being a political leader, she's a powerful person, and she's got a Sun-Mars conjunction. Said I don't know a great deal about her, but she seems to be quite strident, and the AfD is doing well politically in Germany. So there is her Sun-Mars conjunction in Aquarius. I don't have her time of birth. but we can see that in her case, she's got Mercury on a Sun-Mars midpoint. So if you've got Mercury on a Sun-Mars midpoint, I mean, she not only is the Sun-Mars in conjunction, fairly wide conjunction, within 5 degrees, Mercury's on that Sun-Mars conjunction. That would be very good for giving political speeches, for being able to communicate politically, particularly as it's in Aquarius, not getting too emotional. She doesn't really have any stuff in water signs unless you count Uranus, but being able to communicate in speeches with a certain amount of violence, a certain amount of hostility, but it's quite cutting having Mercury on a Sun-Mars midpoint, and maybe controversial. Okay, I want to finish with, let me pronounce this right, Ghislaine Maxwell, because it's spelled Ghislaine, but you apparently don't pronounce the S. So Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, she's in prison at the moment for whatever she was up to with Jeffrey Epstein. And she has a Sun-Mars conjunction. There we have it. Her Sun is at 3:30. We have a time of birth for her. She's born in France. Her Sun is at 0:39 Capricorn. Mars is at 0:39 Capricorn. Sun is at 3:34 Capricorn. So that's is that aggressive? I mean, I suppose in terms of what she was doing with Jeffrey Epstein and this whole procurement thing. What was it? Procuring? I don't know. I don't want to. I mean, I don't have the details to hand. But whatever she was doing, she, I suppose, was being quite aggressive about it in her own way, and that Sun-Mars conjunction. What do we make of that? Well, that Sun-Mars conjunction is in the 8th house, and those are 2 male planets. So a woman with male planets on the 8th house. What do those planets tell us about? They tell us about the men in her life. What kind of man is she attracted to? Well, she would be attracted, I assume, to someone quite assertive, someone perhaps over the top assertive. And of course, the first man she is going to perhaps be attracted to is her own father. And, Robert Maxwell, I mean, some people, her father, Robert Maxwell, some people, describe him as a monster. He was certainly a larger-than-life person. Yeah, very aggressive. He had, he was a soldier during the Second World War. I think he's talked about how he killed people in the Second World War. I don't know, did he talk about a knife? There was a story about what he did when he had a story about what he did in the Second World War. So her father is an aggressive, larger-than-life person, 8th house, who died. His death is a major thing. We don't know whether he committed suicide, whether it was an accident, whether he was pushed, but he was on this yacht off the Canary Islands. His empire had just collapsed, and he went over the side. So that's one person in her life who died in quite a dramatic way. Then I suppose she looks for someone who might replace her father, and she ends up with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein is certainly not in Robert Maxwell's league. I mean, Robert Maxwell really was a larger-than-life person. And then there's Jeffrey Epstein, and what happened to Jeffrey Epstein? Well, again, he hanged himself, although some people say that someone else was involved. Who knows? But it's interesting that in both cases of Robert Maxwell, her father, and Jeffrey Epstein, there's question marks about whether they committed suicide. In both cases, the general idea is they committed suicide, because in both cases, both men were in incredible trouble. Robert Maxwell's empire had gone. He would have ended up in prison. Likewise, Jeffrey Epstein was already in prison. So both men committed suicide. In her chart, we've got this Sun-Mars conjunction on the 8th house cusp. And if we look at the day that her father died, November the 5th, 1991, we see that there was a Sun-Mars conjunction. That is a reminder, by the way, that if you've got an aspect in your chart, particularly a close aspect, you may experience events when that aspect repeats, even if it doesn't transit your chart. So what I'm saying is, if you look at Ghislaine Maxwell's chart, she's got the Sun-Mars conjunction in her chart, and her father killed himself, or was pushed, or whatever happened, with a Sun-Mars conjunction. So those are some charts with the Sun-Mars conjunction. Now, these were charts that sort of I'd collected. I selected these charts with the criteria of, having a 5-degree orb. So, I mean, I think we're getting a bit of a picture with that very sort of bias selection, because, I'm the one who's interested in these charts, so perhaps they reflect the kind of chart that I'm looking for. But maybe you get a picture of the kind of ways in which the Sun-Mars conjunction can work in a natal chart. Okay, that's all I'm going to say for now. And I will talk to you again tomorrow.